You're listening to Experience This, a show about the emerging experience economy with your host, Tom Young.
Hey, welcome to the show. This is Tom Young. I'm sitting here with Karen Bajwa in the studio.
Hey, Tom. How's it going?
All right. Hey, today we're going to talk about one of the trips that we did while we were out in California. We were out at the IBM Think conference, and at the tail end of the conference, we decided to go up to Napa. And again, like a lot of the things we did out there, we didn't have a plan, but we did make plans to tour Napa. When we got up there, we stayed at the Marriott in Napa, and you had called the hotel to arrange for us to have a big Suburban to take 7 of us around and drive. Tell us a little bit how you set that up.
So I think we decided the day before that we were actually going to finalize and actually go to Napa since we had time on our side. So I called the hotel, which was the Marriott Napa Valley, and basically said to them, Karina was the concierge over there. So I was like, hey, Karina, there's a group of 7 of us coming tomorrow. What do you guys have?
With the crew we had, the last thing we wanted to do was to be driving after, because it was unclear what was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So she said, you know what, there's a couple of guys I know that can do some good tours. And so let me get back to you. She got back to me in about 30 minutes, and she said, Manny is going to be the guy.
Awesome. So Manny set us up, and we had requested to do a few things, but he insisted that we make our first stop at a place that he chose.
Manny was very adamant about letting him, show us around Napa. He's known as the mayor of Napa. So,
there you go. Well, so this is another lesson for people who are traveling, is to use local guides. And then at some level, even if you want to go see something, allow some time for the locals to tell you, go do this. That's what they do. It was interesting on our way. So we're going to talk about the John Anthony Winery, which is the first stop he took us to, which was probably, of all the stops, probably our favorite stop. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm,
okay, so we're driving there, and, I don't know, we're off the beaten path a little bit. And Manny made the point, I was like, yeah, if guides are using GPS to get where they're going, you don't want to use them.
Did you have your GPS on?
I was just looking where we were at, and he made a comment about that, because he just said, I don't need that to go. I know where we're going. I've been here before. So we pull up to this, again, we didn't know what to expect. I didn't have high or low expectations. I just wanted to be, but we pull into this, was like a church.
Yeah, the Church Vineyard. And I had been to Napa once before, and there's that main highway, which has a lot of the commercial vineyards, the bigger vineyards. Mm-hmm. And so when we started going off the beaten path on this 2-lane road, I was like, oh crap, I hope this vineyard's actually good. So we're driving around, and I'm thinking in my head, where is he taking us? But you're right, we pulled into the Church Vineyard.
Yeah, so it looks just like a Dutch Reformed church in Pennsylvania. And it turns out it does look like that, because that's what it is. The owners had fell in love with this church, and they basically bought it, deconstructed it, shipped it to California, and built it. And then they converted it into a home, and then now it is a tasting room for their Los Caneros vineyard. So we go in there, and pretty interesting. It was beautifully laid out.
Yeah, really nice.
And it was a private session for us. We had 7 of us, and Matt, our host, had the whole thing set up. There was a big dining room. It was all laid out with the glasses and tasting sheets ready to go, waiting for us. And at that level, it was a little bit frankly, it was a little intimidating, because oh my God, I thought we were going to come in here and, knock back a few wines and make some jokes. But now it seems like a little more serious. But it was, at the same time, formal. It was informal.
I felt like it was quite laid back in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It was... The place was stunning. I think they had spent over $100,000 remodeling the inside of this beautiful church.
Right.
So it had that California vibe and architecture going on. And the dining room was actually really good, because it felt like you were going to your friend's house for, dinner or a glass of wine.
Right.
That type of informal setting with the formality of learning. And
Matt was... a very comforting host in that way.
So it was really good.
So it was pretty interesting. So let's go to our first clip we have, where, this is really, it's a little out of sequence, but this is you and I at the on the church steps at the end of this, and that'll set up, and we'll just go through we were there for about 2 hours. We'll go through that. So let's go to the first clip. This is you and I on the steps talking about our experience there.
Yep.
So Kieran, we're here on our first stop on our Napa Valley excursion experience here. We're at the John Anthony Family of Wines Vineyards here. We're out down in the Los Caneros area of Napa Valley, and we had the wine tasting at this Pennsylvania church that was transplanted here to California. What do you think about that?
I thought it was phenomenal. You know, I kind of went back and forth with our driver earlier today about what stop we should do first. He said, let me take you to a really cool place. And I said, well, there's a lot along the way on the main strip. He said, trust me, you're going to love this place. And thank God we ended up here. This was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah. We had 7 of us here, and we're in a private, basically a private wine experience where we were able to taste, I think I counted 9 different wines. We tasted, and we're in this old church from Pennsylvania that was converted to a home and is now one of the things they use to showcase some of their wines. They have it looks like 9 vineyards across Napa Valley, and we tried a bunch of the reserves and some different ones. So we're settling up. We bought about a case of wine here on our first stop. But very interesting place, very nice, experience pretty high.
It was amazing, and he actually told us that they have 2 wine cellars downtown, which we might check out tonight, and they've got live music, so excited to check them out. But this was a great first stop.
Yeah, so I think he said it was next to the Andaz Hotel, which is part of the Hyatt chain. So we'll maybe go check that out. We need a place to have dinner tonight and meet one of our client opportunities there sometime tonight. So let's do that. But this far exceeded my expectations here, and I hope the rest of the trip is pretty good. All right, so pretty interesting. So that was a good day. We didn't know how good this was going to be in comparison to all the things we did until we look back on it. But it was very, very interesting. As we were sitting in the session, it was a private session for us. We could ask a bunch of questions, and we were there, as I said, about 2 hours. So there's a lot of dialogue around different things, and we were able to, unlike if you go to a winery and you're on a tour, you can ask 4 or 5 questions, but if you go beyond that, you're annoying. But in this context, you can really ask anything and any amount of questions, and we did. So what did you sense that as well?
Yeah, because I was thinking on some of the tours that you do, the group tours, you're kind of walking around the vineyard, but you can...
And it's a sense of being canned. Yeah. It's a canned tour. I mean, it has to be.
Yeah.
Right? They're doing tours every 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. And so you don't really get to sit down and have a conversation. You just ask about stuff that you see along that route.
Yeah, that's it. I would say it was a conversation.
Yeah. It's definitely more of a nice conversation. Again, around the dinner table.
Right.
So, yeah, very neat.
So one of the issues that we asked is, what is it about the Napa Valley region that makes it Napa Valley? What makes it a premier wine spot for California, and actually for the rest of the world? It's one of the premier wine spots. So we talked to him, and he gave us a little bit of a talk. We recorded some audio while we were there. And so let's go to this next clip where Matt talks a little bit about the Napa region, what makes it unique, and why wine is so special coming out of the Napa Valley.
Sounds good.
This is one that is dry harvested like we talked about. So no irrigation given from bud break to harvest all the way through. It's along the Vaca mountain range. So the Mayacamas are on one side or on the east side of the valley. The Mayacamas are on the west side of the valley. The Vacas are on the east. So this is our southernmost vineyard, the coolest vineyard. It's only it's not that far from the ocean. And what ends up the San Pablo Bay, the breeze kind of trickles along. So it keeps it cooler to where the root system, those top roots, we give them no irrigation and they still seem to think everything's cool because it's a cooler climate. And it's literally between Humansville and say Calistoga, the north of Valley. On the average summer day, it's about 12 degrees difference in temperature, 12 degrees cooler.
So anyway, very interesting that he talks about the 2 mountain ranges creating this valley. And the valley's, I would say, a couple miles wide. So it's pretty extensive when you're riding down that main highway.
Yeah.
And it goes from Napa all the way up to...
About Calistoga, I think is the top end.
And it's, 15, 20 miles, maybe 25 miles.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure, but it's a quite a large region. And when we drove up and down, we drove a good part of it. We drove as far up as Oakville. Most of it is dedicated to the vineyards, right? So when you drive up and down the road, there's just wine vines. What did I say? Wine vines. I haven't been drinking, by the way. But you have these vines that are out there. And I imagine it's quite stunning in the August, September when all the grapes are on there. When we were there, it was basically their vines are bare.
Yeah, start of the season, right?
What was interesting also, he talks about, we talk about, when you look at the vines, they talk about stressing the plant.
Yeah, I remember that.
So you want to stress the vine to have it struggle to make the grape. I thought that was an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's almost like they want these grapes to be almost ready to burst.
Yeah, in a way, it reminded me of bonsai trees, right? Where the growth is restricted in such a way to create these small miniature trees. In this case, the vine shoots are clipped back, and you have basically most of the vines are in a T formation. It comes up from the ground, and then about 2 or 3 feet, maybe 3.5 feet, and then they extend out laterally onto the vine racks.
Wow!
And it's quite interesting. I would really like to go back in the August-September timeframe when they harvest.
Yeah.
And because then you get to see the grapes on the vines and see how the whole operation works. We saw videos of it when we were out there, but it was pretty interesting. But it was interesting talking to Matt about their whole operation, right? Because the church gives off a persona when we were there of a small operation, but they have, I think, 9 locations around the Napa Valley, and they make quite a bit of wine. There's not a small winery. It's just not as well known as, say, Robert Mondavi. Yeah,
and they've got some tasting rooms in downtown Napa. So, and we actually didn't see a bunch of the tasting rooms, but when we traveled over to Sonoma, you saw that a bit more. The concept of, being able to experience the wine and have a conversation about it, but not necessarily be in the vineyard. So they've got that set up as well if you happen to be in downtown Napa.
It seems like my impression was that the tasting rooms in Napa were co-located with the vineyards.
Yes.
Where in Sonoma, the tasting rooms were concentrated in the square in Sonoma and not necessarily next to the vineyard.
Yeah, very true.
So one lends itself to a nice pub crawl and the other one does not. So, but they're both good. I when I look back at it, I like that campy feeling or the beatnik feeling of Sonoma.
Yeah.
While we were doing that, but both are very good especially if you're into wine. Mm-hmm. But we talked about, because I think he had a tasting sheet in front of us.
Correct.
And he was pouring a bunch of wines. Now, when you get these drawings, it's not like you're drinking 7 or 8 glasses of wine. They're small pours. They're like about an ounce. So maybe 4 or 5 of these equals a glass of wine.
Yeah.
But we had maybe about 9 samples of different wines. And frankly, I'm not a big wine guy. I mean, I like wine as much as the next person, and I can taste the difference between good stuff and bad. But after 5 or 6, it's like
it all starts to taste.
It could be Ripple, and it'd be like, this is great. But we tried to do the best we could to do it. And what was interesting is he talked very openly about, because it's intimidating for people when you get the wine snobs that are out there who say, oh, you have to do it this way or that way, and cleanse your palate, and swirl it around, spit it out, and close your eyes, all these different techniques. And he's basically dispelled that myth.
Which I thought was really good. So this is what I actually liked. It felt like he had taken the pretentiousness that's sometimes associated with wine out of the equation. And I even joked around with him, and so I was like, what's the deal with swirling and the notes of oak and etc. and he was like a really good sport about that. So it was good. It was very relaxed.
Well, he was basically saying the wine is good if you like it.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, it's not good.
Right.
And so it's not what other people say, it's what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you embrace that concept, then it really doesn't matter. It's whatever suits your fan. If you like box wine, knock yourself out. You're lucky because it's inexpensive.
Yeah.
If you like Screaming Eagle, you better have a good job because it's $3,500 a bottle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, Matt was great. He was very disarming. helped us out and very informative. I learned a lot in
Yeah.
that because it was a conversation and not a canned tour.
We definitely even learned a lot about the reserve wines that were on that sheet.
Yeah, what was interesting to me also was their business model, right? So a lot of these reserve wines are not sold in the store. Sometimes they are, but a lot of times they're sold to their members.
Yeah.
So you can join and be a member of the John Anthony Winery, and most of the wineries offer membership. And they pull out, maybe the top 2%, 3% of a vintage, and pull that aside as a reserve. And we asked about how they do that, right? Because there's a whole sampling process, and you have to have people who really can distinguish the base vintage to the reserves. And we tasted a few of the reserves, but we asked him about that in our next clip. He talks little bit about how the process they go through to come up with those reserve wines. Yeah. So here, listen to this.
And we're going to finish off here. I've got some 2012 Reserve. So the Reserve, a lot of people have certain plots of land. They say, hey, this is where all our best grapes are. What we do with the Reserve, we literally pick out the 4 best barrels every year, and that's what the Reserve. So you're literally getting...
tell me about a little bit about how you discern the regular part of the vintage versus those best barrels. How does that...
Well, we have 2 phenomenal winemakers in Jeff Kandarian and Michael Abernathy. Jeff, a lot of time up in Willamette Valley, is a phenomenal Pinot maker, but across the board, all varietals, if you will. And then Michael Abernathy, he was with Mondavi, went to UC Davis. So we have 2 winemakers who are phenomenal to begin with. We have John, who, he grew up with the vines and stuff. His dad is a legendary winemaker. John is great with the wine. And we have 2 vice presidents. We have Jeff Whitman and we have Dallas Brennan. So between the 5 of them, they literally figure out and taste. And that's what you usually do, is you taste by committee to figure out what the best barrels are.
So they're sampling each barrel.
They're sampling each barrel. It's a rough life, but yes, they're sampling each barrel.
So, and is there a lot of differentiation? Like, say, in a batch, how many would be 100 barrels?
No, I mean it varies. Like if I will do a breakdown because it varies year to year. But like I was telling you, our average production case wise is 4,200 on average a year. Each barrel is 25 cases. So I mean, if you want to do the math, there's quite a few. Like the 2016 Napa Valley, I think we did 1,500 cases of it, something like that. Mm-hmm. So if you break it down into how many barrels there actually are, what would that be, like 40 for 1,000? So there'd be 60 barrels if there's 1,500 cases.
So when you pull out the top 4 of that reserve, that could be 5%? 10%?
It's not going to be, no, it's going to be lower than that. But what it ends up being is like you have barrels of wine coming from all different areas. So you see we have like 9 different vineyards on the map. So not all of them are producing Cabernet, but quite a few of them are, and they are centered around the Oak Knoll district predominantly. So you are getting a lot of Cabernet coming out of Oak Knoll. Usually a large portion of the reserve is coming out of the Oak Knoll district. But we're basically leaving it open to interpretation. We literally want the best going into the reserve every year. And then it has the most extensive barrel aging, if you will, at 30 months. So when we're saying the reserve, we're not hoping that it's going to be the best, this tract of land,
right.
Where certain wineries are like, this is where our best grapes always come from. And it goes year to year. It's literally like whatever's going to produce the best of the best. We are going to go and they're going to taste it and they're going to figure out which are the best, and it's going to be by committee, and that's how it's going to get down to the reserve.
So that was very, very interesting. I can imagine if you're on that committee of 5 people who are trying to taste that, I was struggling to keep up with when we're on our 9th glass of wine to distinguish that, but you really have to have a discerning palate to taste 30 or 40 barrels.
And one note on that too, it was cool when we went over to Robert Mondavi, and we saw the tour there, that the barrels that were inside were actually storing the reserve wine. Mm-hmm. So you can see that the reserve wines, special care goes into keeping an eye on them.
Yeah, and when they put them in an oak barrel, these barrels are not inexpensive.
No.
So you get these French oak handmade barrels that are very interesting, but they're probably between $1,000 and $2,000 each.
Yeah, they're very pricey.
Yeah.
I think we did the math on the merchandise in that room, and it
was something else,
yeah.
right? So, so anyway, we're there. We're enjoying this, and was interesting. I would say the revelation came to me maybe about halfway through this event that this winery, the John Anthony Winery, actually makes one of the leading Chardonnays in the country.
Butter Chardonnay.
Yeah. Now I don't drink white wines that often, but I'd not heard of it, but he said they sold, was it 1 million cases?
1 million cases.
That's a lot of wine.
Yeah. So I think there's a clip coming up around this, but I'm pretty sure it's either the leading or the second leading Chardonnay in North America. But we can double check that, and I think he talks about that in the clip.
Yeah, but that's so. And they also with that butter, I think butter Chardonnay.
Yeah.
They have a bus, the Butter Bus, and they sponsor this music festival in Napa called Bottle Rock.
Yeah.
And it's in the early summer, late spring, and it's coming up. And it's not a small music festival. It's got a lot of headliners there, and they might get about 50,000 people, which you look around Napa, you're like, where are these people staying?
I know. That was one of my questions to him. Can Napa absorb 60,000 people coming into this festival? And he said, yeah, it's actually no problem. I can imagine all those Airbnbs are probably sold out.
All the locals go down to San Francisco for the weekend and rent their houses out on
yeah.
Airbnb.
And some great acts. I think we saw the sign when we were driving up that main highway there in Napa, but like Mumford & Sons were headlining, so they've got pulling in some big names.
Yeah, so that looks like a lot of fun. He talks about how they promote their wine there, and they're one of the big sponsors of this. So again, that was, as the conversation evolved, you're like, okay, we walk into this church, we think, oh my God, we're in a family thing. We're going to be drinking grandma's hooch, and it turns out that this is just one aspect of the winery that they have. It's a much bigger operation. So.
Yeah.
Let's go to this next clip, and he talks a little bit about their butter Chardonnay and the music festival that they sponsor.
So we have the butter balls and stuff we throw out there for like the butter Chardonnay. And then my next door neighbor, Dave, actually, he was here right before you guys got here. He drives the butter bus. So we bought one of the Keith Jackson, the country star. We bought his old tour bus. We painted it bright yellow, banana yellow. It says butter on it. He drives around. We do all this stuff with iHeartRadio and like with Southern Wine and Spirits, but we do like football games. So he'll show up to the Michigan State football game. People are like, what's butter? And then all the balls start coming out, the beach balls, and people drinking butter and like, ooh, well, I mean, it's just phenomenal advertising. But this is...
and you say you sold a million bottles?
We sold 1 million cases.
1 million cases?
We're number 2 in North America for over $12 price point.
Wow.
We're one of the top 5 moving beverages moving in as far as alcohol beverages moving in the country right now.
Wow. So that's interesting. So we're doing some work with another music festival organizer and talking to him about that, and I'd be very interested. It's interesting how things come together. We're talking to a music festival, and then we're out there, and then we get exposed to this music festival. So we're learning a lot about that, and we did a show recently on the Fire Festival, so it's pretty interesting how
music
these things
festivals
come in threes.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was very good. So we ended up buying a good bit of wine. I think we bought about $1,000 worth of wine, had it shipped out here.
And I think you became a member of the wine club.
So we could buy some of the reserves, I think. So I don't know exactly what we got. I'd had 9 glasses of wine up to that point. So
I think we have a lot of bottles of wine headed our way.
We're going to have Wendy track down where it's at. So when the wine gets here, we'll put it in the wine cooler here.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a nice party this spring when we can do it outside.
Awesome.
So maybe we'll do our own little music festival here at Rumjog headquarters.
Yeah.
That would be fun. But I look forward to getting that. It was a great stop, and
it was really good.
These are the kind of experiences that can only be had if you are open to the possibilities of being surprised.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if we planned this, we wouldn't have planned it. Is that fair?
Very fair.
So, again, this goes back. We talked about Manny at the very beginning. And Manny was a great pick for us because he got along well with us. He had a nice big car where he could jam in there, and he took us around. He was very flexible. He asserted himself when he needed to, and we have this final clip with you interviewing Manny, who is a real character, and you can see it from the video when you watch this and listen to his voice. He's really passionate about what he does.
He loves it.
And I would encourage people to reach out to Manny. We'll put his contact information in our show notes so you can reach out to him if you happen to be out in that area.
Yep.
But he is a great addition to our trip that day, and he laid this out for us. But again, you can't experience these kind of things that we thought was great, probably the highlight of our day. But you can only do this if you're open to the possibilities. So let's go to this last clip where you're interviewing Manny outside the church.
So we're here at John Anthony Vineyards. It was a great first stop on our tour, highly recommended by Manny. So Manny, earlier today when we were communicating, you recommended, do you know what? You said, you know what, just trust me on this tour. And I said, oh, well, there's a lot of places along that busy highway. And you said, no. Just let me lead the way. How did you know about this place?
Well, this is what we do to all of our guests. We like to take them to the small boutique wineries where you're going to be the only one at the time. You're going to try some great one-of-a-kind killing wines that only Manny can take you there. Now, when I tell you next time, please let me show you what we have in the agenda for you is because we know best.
You did. You definitely do know best. And actually, inside, we heard that Manny should run for mayor. So it seems like Manny has a lot of history in this area. You've been living here for a long time.
I have. This is my 22nd year in the Valley, and I'm not going to run for mayor. I'm going to be the president. So, vote for me.
All right, that's great. So you can see he's a real character, and
Manny's a hoot.
you call him you said the mayor.
The mayor, and you saw he's like, don't call me the mayor. I'm going for president.
There you go. That's right. So anyway, so it was a great day. Again, we end up spending the rest of the day up and down Napa, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed everything, but I would say this was the highlight of the trip.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I think I would advise folks that are coming into town, definitely get yourself squared away with Manny, and you can. There's a lot of vineyards to cover, and you could do it the entire day. We probably did about between 5 and 6 hours. It was a good amount of time, so you can actually spend some time at each of the vineyards. But it's a place you got to drive. It's not like you can just walk from vineyard to vineyard. It's pretty sprawling and spread out there.
Yeah, my sense is unless you're, it's not like a pub crawl.
No, it's not.
So to me, a little bit less is more here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if looking back on what we did, I would do this, maybe Mondavi, which is a really at the other end of the spectrum. You can see because it's one of the largest corporate vineyards there, and their tour was very well done, by the way. And then maybe one other, three, and mix it up a little bit. Pick one you like. We tried to get into Prisoner and Cake Bread. We couldn't get in.
Right.
But just, in fact, use your tour guide, but mix it up a little bit. When you go to a private session like this, it's a little bit more of a commitment than walking through the main wineries where you're just a member on a large tour. But to me, the less is more. And by the time you get to the fourth or fifth place, is a diminishing return on the value, and you probably don't want to appreciate it as much as you do your first or second stop.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Do it again?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And then we have another show that we did. We talked about our next day, and we recorded on the outside of Napa, outside of the Bouchon Bakery. And then we took a drive over to Sonoma the next day.
That was a nice drive.
Nice drive, and a little bit of contrast to Napa, but also very good.
Yep.
So any other parting comments?
No, it was a great time.
Looking forward to drinking that John Anthony wine at the end.
Definitely.
We'll do that. We'll do that in a couple months.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Karen, I think you were supposed to say that.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take it from here.
All right, well, we got to do this is the new Outcast.
Oh, the outro. The outro.
I think Outcast is a new word. All right, outro. We're doing a new outro. We got to cover a few things.
All right.
One is what? Subscription.
Do you subscribe through?
We want people to subscribe to this, not just listen to it occasionally.
Okay, yeah. Check us out.
The second thing is nothing's better than what? A 5-star rating.
Always 5 stars.
Got to give us the 5 stars because we get better search outcomes. And the last thing is comments.
We need those.
Yeah,
we need your feedback.
We want to know what people are thinking. So you can check us out. The best way to do it, if you're not sure, some people don't know how to do it, go to our website. You can check it out. We'll have a full set of instructions. So whatever app you're using. Most people use, what do you use, Karen?
I use Spotify.
You do?
Yeah.
So we have Spotify, we have iTunes, YouTube. There's a whole bunch. Whatever you use, we have it. And if we don't have it, let us know, and we'll try to figure out how to get it.
We can send you a paper-based instruction.
Actually, we do have paper-based instructions, even though that's a fun inside joke to our team. So anyway, Thanks for listening, and check us out in our next shows.
Thanks. See ya.